stars and garters, you guys love watching villains get their comeuppance. And you know what? So do I. So, today on Top 10 Nerd, it's part 4 of the top 10 brutal villain defeats. Now look, I see a part 5 in my future, so I'm going to call on you guys to go watch the other 3 parts of this list and give me your favorite defeats that have not been talked about so far. But coming in at number 10 is Jack Frost. When Jimmy Olsen was on a game show back in the Silver Age series Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen number 33, a special prism appeared randomly in a garbage dump that, for some reason, turned the thoughts of the game show contestants into reality. Just go with it, it's a comic book, okay? So, when Jimmy answered a game show question with Jack Frost, that's exactly who appeared. Jack Frost, as a villain, threatened to plunge the world into a new ice age. Now I'm sure that's not at all what Jimmy had in mind, but luckily he is Superman's pal, so what was Superman's solution? Simple. He would just go fly into space and move the frickin' sun closer to the Earth. Not only is this an absolutely ridiculous feat, which is theoretically completely impossible, but it was incredibly embarrassing looking for Jack Frost, who had to run away from Superman, who was essentially chasing the freezing villain with the sun. Once Jack Frost had retreated into a deep, cold cave, Superman put the sun back where he got it so it didn't destroy the Earth. The bonkers part about this is that he did all this nonchalantly as if he was moving furniture. Number 9. Hank Henshaw. After Superman's infamous death at the hands of Doomsday and his not exactly surprising return to life, Superman had to clean up the messes made in his absence, including some imposter Supermen. One of which would be the cyborg Superman, Hank Henshaw, that took over the role of Superman in his place. This cyborg wasn't really doing a great job with his Supermaning, and I think most would agree that he was really tarnishing the name of Superman. Because he was. Hank ruined Soup's memorial, and more importantly, he had just blown up Coast City, taking the life of millions of people. Now, when Superman actually returns from the dead, he doesn't have his powers back just yet, so the conflict actually lasts a little while. But once Superman gets his powers back, you best believe he beats this sucker, and in one page no less. Hank is a cyborg, like I said, so Superman ends this guy by simply punching him straight through the chest and then using his super speed to shake him so fast his screws come loose and he just straight up falls apart. Superman shook this sucker to death. Number 8. The Marquis of Death. In 2009's Fantastic Four number 566, Dr. Victor Von Doom reveals to us and his people that he had learned almost everything he knows from one incredibly powerful reality warping villain called the Marquis of Death. With his master now on his way to see how Dr. Doom had fared as ruler over the Earth. Only, when the Marquis shows up with his mysterious new apprentice, he was less than happy with the progress Doom had made on Earth, and to punish his old apprentice, he attacks. The Marquis completely warped reality, making Doom think he had actually won the fight, and then snatched the victory away, set him on fire, turned his heart to stone and his blood to acid, and then sent him back in time to the Pliocene age to be eaten by megalodons. Do you realize how insane that sentence is on its own? That should be the point right there. But over the course of the rest of the story, the Marquis goes on to fight the Fantastic Four, almost beating them. But he is brought to a point of nearly being beaten, which is when, out of nowhere, his apprentice, the new one, shows up and slaps and destroys this reality warping villain, but not before revealing that he is actually Dr. Doom himself. Apparently, Dr. Doom survived being eaten by megalodons and being turned to stone and his blood to acid, gained enough power and dark magic to completely change his form, became the Marquis' new apprentice, even defeating Uatu the Watcher so he wouldn't be discovered, and he did all of that to hide in plain sight to get his revenge and finally defeat the Marquis of Death. If you guys are enjoying this list so far, make sure you check out the rest of the channel for parts 1 to 3 and maybe subscribe while you're there so you don't miss part 5 and all the rest of our comic book loving content. Thank you. In at number 7 is the Superman Revenge Squad. After discovering the planet of the Superman Revenge Squad, Superman wastes no time at all and charges at the planet with a full frontal assault armed with nothing but his abilities and a strange package attached to his chest. The Revenge Squad fires all their most dangerous, most powerful weapons at Superman, firing everything they think will take out the Man of Steel. They all impact on Kal-El, and the villains think they've won. for a moment. But when the dust settled, they didn't even leave a scratch. Instead, the package on Superman's chest detonated, encircling the whole planet in a layer of mist. Now, Superman then yells down to the villains from the heavens, explaining if any of them pass through the mist leaving the planet, they will suffer total amnesia, forgetting any hatred they have for Superman. They can remain trapped on their base, being angry and upset, or they can rejoin the cosmos devoid of all grudges. Either way, he doubts he will ever see them again, and then he just flies on back home. And in at number 6, Psimon. Psimon Jones is a villain of the Teen Titans who has vast telekinesis and telepathic powers, and he is also the leader of the Fearsome Five. All of that, but he basically just calls himself Psimon. But cool because there's a P in front of it, so we know that he is a psychic dude, I guess. Cool. In Salvation Run number 2, Psimon is among the new Injustice League when a bunch of villains, including them, get exiled to an alien world. Psimon, who is standing among some pretty big name villains, attempts to convince his fellow supervillains that escape is impossible, and so he then proceeds to lay down plans for beginning a new civilization, involving all the female villains getting pregnant and giving birth as soon and as frequently as possible. But luckily, the Joker is also here, and he doesn't seem to be a fan. Joker very abruptly interrupts Psimon, tossing a rock that hits the guy square in the noggin, and then running up and smashing Psimon over the head repeatedly with a rock, assuming control. Number 5, Captain Boomerang. This brutal defeat is so quick and so abrupt, there isn't even much I can really say about it other than you should never put a captain up against a general. In 2016 Suicide Squad, in literally the second issue, Task Force X are sent on a mission to Russia to retrieve or destroy an unknown device. Well, turns out that the device is actually a portal to the Phantom Zone. Rather than leave it be, which would probably have been smart, Captain Boomerang approaches the portal and is almost instantly incinerated down to his ankles by none other than General Zod, using his heat vision. I doubt the Boomerang guy would have been able to help much in the squad's fight against Zod, and honestly it's a miracle any of them survived at all, but I never expected this to happen so abruptly and to one of the main members of the squad. And in at number 4 is Mr. Mxyzptlk. The villain known as Mr. Mxyzptlk is both incredibly powerful, but he also doesn't really do anything that bad. He's usually just a big old nuisance. In Superman Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, a whole bunch of Superman's villains all make their play on the Man of Steel, and when their threat is ended, Superman is still left wondering why the heck this is all happening, when he realizes the only villain that wasn't among them was the fifth dimensional imp himself, which is when he finally reveals himself. He goes on about how, being completely immortal, he gets really bored. He spent 2,000 years just floating around doing nothing, and then 2,000 years doing good deeds and being nice, and then he spent 2,000 years being a mischievous little imp, and now, of all times, he decides he's gonna start being evil, and his first evil act is to kick off the next 2 millennia, by taking out Superman. That's basically what he says. But I don't think it was like that. Anyways, Mr. Mix reveals his horrendous true form and goes on the attack. Unfortunately, Superman's girl Lois Lane figured out what to do. Superman grabbed the Phantom Zone projector, and as he was about to use it on this magical imp, Mr. Mix spoke his name backwards, which would return him back to the 5th dimension. Unfortunately, this happened simultaneously, and Mxyzptlk was torn in half between both the Phantom Zone and the 5th dimension. And apparently Superman did this completely on purpose, and then he runs off to go and sulk about it. Number 3. Dinosaurus. The Viltrumites from the Invincible comic series are a race of near invulnerable, incredibly strong, world-conquering aliens, but none among them stands as strong and as invulnerable as Grand Regent Thrag. Battle-hardened over thousands of years, only the most powerful characters can even hope to stand mano-a-mano against this powerhouse. David Anders, the villain known as Dinosaurus, is not one of those characters. While Dinosaurus is very strong, it's more so his intelligence that is his greatest weapon. Dinosaurus allied himself with Invincible around issue 90 of the comic, and in an attempt on Mark's life by Thrag, Dinosaurus comes to Invincible's aid, which he had to know would not go well. Dinosaurus attacks Thrag, but his claws shatter like glass on Thrag's skin. Thrag then proceeds to pummel Mr. Anders, only stopping when he was distracted by an explosion. This brief moment of pause gave Dinosaurus the chance to chomp on the Grand Regent's head, but unfortunately, just like his claws, Dino's teeth also completely shatter, not even leaving a scratch on Thrag, which gives Thrag the chance to first mock the guy, but then break his jaw and leave him to think about his mistake. And in at number 2 is Vulcan. In recent years, the red planet that was formerly known to us as Mars has become home to a group of mutants known as the Iraqi, who renamed the planet to Araco. These mutants differ from the Krakoan mutants we know by years and years of a constant battle for survival. Because of that, the Iraqi are a warlike people. They despise weakness and take on almost any challenge as a means of strengthening themselves. Because of this, duels and challenges are a key part of Iraqi society. Now, the Iraqi are ruled by a group called the Great Ring of Araco, which is made up of almost completely Omega level mutants. One of those mutants is an incredibly disliked guy by the name of Tarn the Uncaring. Now another Omega level mutant who is also pretty unliked by a lot of people is a guy by the name of Gabriel Summers, aka Vulcan, who wields massive energy manipulation abilities, which he can use to take away mutant powers. The problem is, Tarn's ability is also to take away mutant powers. As part of a big convoluted plan, Vulcan challenged Tarn for his seat on the Great Ring of Araco, which all comes to a head in X-Men Red issue 3 from 2022. Just as the fight begins, both mutants simultaneously negate each other's powers, turning their fight into a straight up physical altercation. At first, Vulcan gets in a few good hits. Meaning 2. He gets 2 hits. But he didn't seem to take Tarn's face tentacles into account, one of which catches Vulcan's fist, allowing Tarn to land a face-shattering punch. He then grabs Vulcan's arm with one hand and completely snaps it, then slams his face into the Colosseum floor and crushes it with 3 swift punches, winning the fight. And in at number 1 is Tarn the Uncaring. Ooh, surprise! You thought that was the end of the story. Well, nope. Right after Tarn has turned Vulcan into a floor decoration, he celebrates his win, exclaiming that he is unkillable and asking who will challenge him now. And to his surprise, someone answers. You see, another powerful mutant who is also hanging out on Araco is none other than Magneto, who has been featured a few times in this series. Magneto comes floating into the Colosseum with his helmet and calls Tarn a stain on the planet, challenging the recently victorious mutant whose psychokinetic power-stealing abilities have now returned. But if you think that will put Magneto at a disadvantage, you are sorely mistaken. Iraqi combatants are allowed to use weapons outside of their powers, and like I said, Magneto had his helmet, which, if you are unaware, blocks mental powers. Before Tarn even finishes his sentence to accept the challenge, Magneto uses his metal controlling powers to slam his helmet onto Tarn's head, blocking his powers from being used, and then, in one swift move, he crushes the helmet and Tarn's head like a can of pop. It's so fast and so ruthless, and it's the most badass moment I have ever seen. Mwah. Beautiful. 10 more villains brought lower than ever before. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I've been Adam Andrews, this is Top 10 Nerd, and until next time, I'll catch you on the flippy flop. Keep it real out there, nerds. Bye.